So what if I told you that the language your grandparents spoke could actually make you richer today? I know, it sounds a little out there, right? But stick with me, because we're about to dive into this incredible real-world experiment that found a surprising link between the language you speak and the money in your bank account.
You know, the common wisdom, the thing we've all kind of been told, is that to really get ahead financially, you've got to master a dominant language, right? Think about it, English on the world stage, or a national language like Russian inside Russia. The whole idea is that you assimilate, you learn the majority language, and that's your ticket to economic success.
But what if that's not the whole story? What if nurturing a local minority language, teaching it to kids in school, isn't a handicap but is actually a hidden asset? Yeah, that's the wild idea we're digging into today. The possibility that being bilingual, even with a language that isn't the dominant one, could literally pay off.
Okay, so how on earth do you even test a theory like that? Well, you need a real-world laboratory. And it turns out, researchers found the perfect one in the Republic of Tatarstan. It's this unique region inside Russia that was the absolute ideal place to see if a language policy could actually translate into real economic results.
So let's paint a picture of where we are. Tatarstan, it's a republic within the Russian Federation, home to about 4 million people. But here's what makes it so special for our question. It's officially bilingual. Both Russian and the local Tatar language are on equal footing legally. And the population? It's a real mix of ethnic Tatars and Russians, which creates this amazing, naturally bilingual society.
All right, and this is where the story gets really interesting. The big turning point came right after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Tatarstan started working to bring back its local language, and then, bam, in 1997, a huge educational reform hits. All of a sudden, the Tatar language became a compulsory school subject, with just as many hours dedicated to it as Russian. I mean, this wasn't some tiny tweak. It basically created a massive real-life experiment.
And the really cool thing about this natural experiment, at least for the researchers, is that it perfectly divided the population into 3 distinct groups, all based on what kind of schooling they got. We're going to call them the 3 generations. And trust me, understanding these 3 groups is the absolute key to cracking this whole thing open.
First up, you've got Generation 1, the before generation. These are folks born between 1973 and 1979. They went through the entire school system the old way, where Russian was the main language and Tatar, well, it wasn't a required equal subject. Think of them as our control group, our monolingual baseline.
Then you have Generation 2, the during generation. These are people born from 1980 to 1989. They were the kids who were actually in school when the big 1997 reform happened. So they were caught in the middle. They got a partial transition, a mix of the old and the new bilingual system.
And finally, that brings us to Generation 3, the after generation. Born between 1990 and 1993, these were the youngest kids. Their entire education, from start to finish, happened under the new rules. They got the full compulsory bilingual experience.
Okay, so we've got our 3 groups, the before, the during, and the after. The big question is, did this massive change in their education actually make any difference to their paychecks down the road? All right, let's get into the analysis and see how the economists started following the money.
Now, to figure this out, researchers used a fancy-sounding tool called the Mincer earnings function. Don't worry, don't let the name scare you off. Just think of it like this. It's a way to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. It lets them isolate the effect of just one thing, in this case, bilingual schooling, while filtering out all the other stuff that we already know affects income. Things like age, gender, and how long you've been working.
So this is it, the million-dollar question, or I guess the million-ruble question. Once you filter out all those other factors, who actually earned more? Was it the monolingual before generation or the new bilingual generations?
And the results? Well, they were incredibly clear. The analysis showed this super strong pattern. The people who went through the bilingual system, both the during and after groups, they just flat out had higher wages. And on the flip side, those from the old monolingual system, the before group, earned a lot less. But the real question is, how much less? Get ready for this. When all the data was crunched, the before generation, the ones who were educated entirely in the old monolingual system, earned on average a staggering 46% less in real wages than the folks who got the bilingual schooling. Let that sink in for a second. 46%. That is a massive difference.
Okay, a 46% gap is huge. It absolutely demands an explanation. So why? What is it about being bilingual that creates such a powerful economic advantage? Well, researchers have a name for it. They call it the bilingual bonus.
So, the theory behind this bonus pretty much breaks down into 3 simple steps. Step 1. We know from other studies that being bilingual can actually boost your cognitive skills. Step 2. In a place like Tatarstan, where you have this mix of people, knowing both the national and the local language obviously makes communication way better. And step 3, you put those 2 things together, smarter cognitive skills and better communication, and what do you get? A more productive worker. And more productive workers tend to earn higher wages. Makes sense, right?
But then, the data revealed another little twist, something really interesting. The type of school you went to, bilingual versus monolingual, had this huge, statistically significant impact on wages. But here's the surprise. The total number of years someone spent in school, it wasn't nearly as important in this model. It really suggests that when it comes to education, the quality and type of learning can pack a much bigger economic punch than just the quantity of it.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. What does this one experiment in one specific republic in Russia tell us about the value of language on a global scale? Because this isn't just a local story, not at all. It has some really big implications.
Now, of course, to be clear, language isn't the only thing that matters for your paycheck. Not by a long shot. The study definitely confirmed that other factors, like your age and work experience, still play a huge role. And it also showed a pretty persistent gender wage gap, with men earning more. So bilingualism was a powerful and maybe surprising new piece of the puzzle, but it still fits into a much larger economic picture. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, usually when we talk about protecting minority languages, the conversation is all about culture, identity, and heritage. But what this research really argues is that we need to start framing it as an economic issue too. Supporting these languages isn't just about preserving the past, it might actually be a really smart investment in a community's financial future.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The researchers themselves made this point crystal clear in their conclusion. They basically said that their findings should help people understand the real advantages of bilingualism and should be used to support policies that help revitalize minority languages, not just in Tatarstan, but all over the world.
So that leaves us with this final thought. For a long time, the conventional wisdom saw minority languages as, maybe relics of the past, or even as a barrier to getting ahead. But this evidence, it flips that entire idea right on its head. And it forces us to ask a totally new and pretty urgent question. If your language is a real, tangible economic asset, then what's the real cost of letting it just disappear?